The music stopped. Not because the band made a mistake, not because the bride had arrived, but because an old man wearing torn clothes slowly stepped through the grand entrance of the most expensive wedding anyone in Ashcroft had ever seen. People turned. Some laughed. Others covered their noses. A little girl hiding behind a chair whispered, "Mom, why is that homeless man crying?" No one knew. Why had he come to this wedding? Why did he hold an old wooden box so tightly against his chest? And why did the bride freeze the very second she looked into his eyes? The groom frowned. The guests exchanged confused looks. Security started walking toward the stranger. But before they could touch him, the bride suddenly lifted her wedding dress and began running straight toward the old man. What happened next left every single guest speechless. But before we uncover that unforgettable moment, take a second to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Stories like this remind us that the truth often hides where nobody thinks to look. 28-year-old Elena Cross looked like she had stepped out of a fairy tale. Her white gown shimmered beneath thousands of crystal lights. Her smile appeared perfect. Every magazine in the city called her America's sweetheart. She owned a successful children's bookstore. She volunteered every weekend. She never spoke badly about anyone. To the world, Elena seemed to have the perfect life. But perfection can be the heaviest mask. Every morning before opening her bookstore, Elena unlocked a tiny wooden drawer hidden beneath the front counter. Inside rested a faded photograph. The picture showed a little girl no older than 6, holding the hand of a smiling man whose face had been scratched away. She looked at that photo every single day. Then she quietly closed the drawer before anyone could see. Even her closest friends never knew why. Because there was one question that had followed Elena her entire life. Who was the man whose face had disappeared from the only picture of her childhood? She had asked that question hundreds of times. Every answer sounded different. Every answer felt incomplete. And every answer left an empty space inside her heart. Across town, 32-year-old Gavin Mercer adjusted his expensive tuxedo in front of a full-length mirror. Successful, confident, handsome, everything people admired. He had built one of the fastest-growing real estate companies in the state. Business magazines loved him. Investors trusted him. His speeches inspired young entrepreneurs. He knew exactly what to say, exactly how to smile, exactly when to shake someone's hand. But there was one thing Gavin loved more than success: control. Nothing happened unless he approved it. Nothing escaped his attention, especially today. Today had to be perfect, because this wedding wasn't just about love. It was about reputation, status, power, and absolutely no surprises. Yet fate had already planned something very different. Wedding planner Maya Bennett hurried across the ballroom, checking every table. Flowers, candles, music. Everything looked flawless. Still, she couldn't shake the strange feeling growing inside her. Earlier that morning, an elderly delivery driver had arrived carrying a small package. There was no return address. Only 5 handwritten words. For Elena. Open after sunset. Maya tried calling the sender. Nothing. The driver had disappeared before anyone could ask questions. So she locked the package inside her office. She planned to give it to Elena after the ceremony. She had no idea that simple decision would change everything. Outside, rain clouds slowly gathered over the bright afternoon sky. An old man sat alone on a weathered park bench, nearly half a mile from the wedding venue. His name was Silas Reed. His coat was patched together with pieces of different fabric. His boots were cracked. His hands trembled from age. People walking past barely looked at him. Some tossed coins into an old paper cup. Others pretended he didn't exist. Silas never asked anyone for money. Instead, he watched the wedding venue from a distance. His tired eyes never left the building. Every few minutes he reached into his pocket and touched a tiny silver key. Then he whispered the same sentence. Just let me see her smile one more time.
Who was he talking about?
No one knew. Inside the bridal suite, Elena stared into the mirror. Her best friend, Naomi Brooks, smiled as she fixed the veil. You should be nervous, Naomi teased. You've dreamed about this day forever. Elena forced a laugh. I guess I have. Naomi noticed the smile disappear almost instantly. What is it? Elena looked toward the window. Have you ever felt like something important is missing, even when everything is finally going right? Naomi stayed quiet. Sometimes silence comforts more than words. Finally, she squeezed Elena's hand. Whatever you're searching for, maybe today is the day you'll find it. Neither of them realized how true those words would become. Across the city, Silas slowly stood. He opened the old wooden box he had protected for years. Inside were only three things: a tiny knitted blue sweater, a silver key, and a folded letter with faded edges. He carefully touched each one. His hands shook even harder. A tear rolled down his wrinkled cheek. I promised, he whispered. I never broke my promise. Then he closed the box. Far away, a black luxury SUV quietly stopped beside the curb. The tinted window lowered just enough for someone inside to watch Silas. A man's voice spoke softly. So, he finally came. The driver asked, should we stop him? There was a long silence. Then, the mysterious passenger smiled. Not yet. Let's see what he remembers. The window rolled back up. The SUV disappeared into traffic. Silas never noticed he was being watched, but someone clearly feared what he might reveal. Who was hiding inside that vehicle? And what secret were they desperate to protect? That answer would remain buried, at least for now. The church bells echoed across the valley. 1, 2, 3. Every guest stood as soft music filled the ballroom. Rows of white roses lined the aisle. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Every camera turned toward the entrance, waiting for the bride. No one noticed the old man slowly walking up the stone pathway outside. Silas Reed tightened his grip on the small wooden box. His steps were slow. Each one seemed to carry years of pain. He stopped at the front gate and looked at the building. His lips trembled. So, this is where your dream came true. Inside, Elena took one last deep breath. Naomi smiled. You ready? Elena nodded. I think so. But her heart refused to calm down. For some reason, she kept thinking about the faded photograph hidden inside her bookstore. The one with the scratched-out face. Why did that memory suddenly feel so close? Outside, 2 security guards stepped in front of Silas. One crossed his arms. Private event. Silas politely nodded. I know. You'll have to leave. I only came to give someone a gift. The younger guard looked at the worn wooden box and laughed. What kind of gift fits in that old thing? Silas smiled gently. The kind that doesn't lose value with time. The guards exchanged amused looks. Sir, please leave. Silas didn't argue. He simply looked toward the entrance one more time. I've waited 22 years. I can wait a few more minutes. Across the parking lot, the black SUV returned. Inside sat a sharply dressed man wearing dark sunglasses. His name was Victor Hale. No guest knew he was there. No one even knew he had been watching Elena for weeks. Victor spoke without taking his eyes off Silas. So, he actually kept the box. The driver glanced into the mirror. Should we take it? Victor slowly shook his head. Not unless we have no choice. What if he tells her everything? Victor's expression hardened. Then everything we've built falls apart. Back inside, the ceremony began. Gavin stood at the altar, smiling confidently. Guests admired the handsome couple. This is the wedding of the year, someone whispered. They're perfect together. Gavin heard the compliment and smiled even wider. He loved hearing that word. Perfect. Because perfection was part of the image he had spent years creating. But images can hide ugly truths. The minister began speaking. Love is built on trust. Elena tried listening. Instead, her eyes drifted toward the stained glass windows. A sudden breeze pushed one window slightly open. A single white feather floated inside the church. It landed gently beside her shoes. Elena stared at it. For a brief second, a forgotten memory flashed through her mind. A man's voice,
Soft. Warm.
holding her tiny hand. Whenever you see a white feather, remember I'm never far away. The memory vanished as quickly as it came. She blinked. What was that? Naomi leaned closer. What happened? Elena looked confused. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was the first crack in a memory buried for decades. Outside, Silas reached into his coat. Instead of asking strangers for money, he pulled out an old pocket watch. The glass was cracked. The chain was broken. He smiled sadly. You always hated when I was late.
He checked the time.
Exactly 2:15. His smile faded. I'm late again. A little boy leaving the ceremony with his grandmother noticed Silas sitting alone. He walked over. Sir. Silas looked up. The child held out a slice of wedding cake wrapped in a napkin. You look hungry. Silas smiled. Thank you. The boy studied his face. You've been crying. Silas gently wiped his eyes. Sometimes happy days remind us of people we miss. The boy nodded, as if he understood. My grandpa says missing someone means you love them a lot. Silas swallowed hard. He was a wise man. The boy smiled and ran back toward his grandmother. Silas looked down at the cake. He never took a bite. Instead, he carefully placed it inside the wooden box, as if saving it for someone else. Inside the reception hall, music filled the room.
Guests laughed.
Champagne glasses clinked together. Everything looked perfect. Yet Maya couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious package still locked inside her office. She finally decided to retrieve it. She unlocked the drawer, picked up the package, then noticed something strange. The envelope had been opened. Her heartbeat quickened. I'm sure I sealed this. Someone had already looked inside. But who, meanwhile? Victor quietly entered the hotel through a side entrance. No one recognized him. He blended into the crowd like an ordinary guest. His eyes searched every corner. Not for Elena, not for Gavin, for Maya, because he knew exactly what was inside that package. And he couldn't let it reach the bride. Near the dance floor, Gavin excused himself from a conversation with investors. His phone vibrated. A private number. He answered quietly. What? The caller spoke only one sentence. He's here. Gavin's smile disappeared instantly. What do you mean he's here? The old man. Gavin slowly turned toward the entrance. His jaw tightened. For the first time that day, he looked genuinely afraid. Keep him outside, Gavin whispered. No matter what. Then he hung up before anyone noticed. Why would the sight of one elderly beggar frighten such a powerful man? Outside, dark clouds finally covered the sun. A cold wind swept across the courtyard. Silas slowly stood again. He looked at the entrance. This is my last chance. He took one careful step toward the doors. Then another. Inside the wooden box, the folded letter slipped slightly open. Only one handwritten sentence became visible. If Elena is reading this, it means I failed to come home. Silas quickly closed the lid before anyone else could see it. But a young photographer standing nearby had already noticed those words. He frowned. Who is that man? Why would a simple letter carry such heartbreaking words? And why did so many people suddenly seem desperate to keep Silas away from the bride? Those answers were closer than ever. But the truth was still hiding in the shadows. The music changed. It was time for the couple's first dance. Guests gathered around the polished dance floor, smiling as hundreds of tiny lights reflected from the ceiling. Elena placed her hand in Gavin's. He smiled for the cameras. You look beautiful, he whispered. Thank you, Elena replied. But her voice sounded distant. Something felt wrong. She couldn't explain it. It was as if her heart was listening for a sound that hadn't happened yet. Outside, Silas stood only a few steps from the entrance. His breathing had become heavier. The long walk had drained what little strength he had left. He looked through the glass doors. He could see the lights, the flowers, the people laughing. And then, for the first time in 22 years, he saw Elena. She was smiling, just like her mother used to smile. Silas's eyes filled with tears. So, you really made it.
Inside.
As Elena slowly turned during the dance, something caught her attention. Beyond the glass doors, she saw an old man standing alone in the rain. Their eyes met. The music faded in her ears. The room seemed to disappear. For one strange second, she felt as though she had known him her entire life. Her feet stopped moving. Gavin looked confused. Elena? She didn't answer. She kept staring. The old man's eyes weren't asking for money. They weren't asking for sympathy. They looked familiar. Too familiar. Silas smiled. Not a wide smile. Just the quiet smile of someone who had waited years for one impossible moment. He gently placed his hand over his heart. Then he whispered through the glass. I'm proud of you. Elena couldn't hear the words, but somehow, she felt them. A chill ran down her spine. Miss. A waiter accidentally bumped Elena's shoulder. She blinked. The moment was gone. When she looked back toward the entrance, the old man had disappeared. She looked around the room. Nothing. Only smiling guests. Who was that? She whispered. Across the ballroom, Victor Hale noticed everything. He had been watching Elena from the second floor. The moment their eyes met, he knew the danger had become real. He quietly took out his phone. Move him. 2 words. Nothing more. Outside, the 2 security guards approached Silas again. This time, they weren't smiling. You've been told to leave. Silas nodded politely. I only need 1 minute.
No.
Please.
No.
Silas lowered his eyes. I made a promise to her mother. The older guard frowned. What did you say? Before Silas could answer, a black sedan pulled into the driveway. 2 men stepped out. Neither wore security uniforms.
Neither introduced themselves.
One spoke calmly. Sir, come with us. Silas took a small step back. I don't know you. You don't need to. The second man reached for the wooden box. Silas pulled it close to his chest.
No.
His voice was quiet, but firm. You can't have this.
Inside.
Naomi noticed Elena looking distracted. You've barely smiled since the dance started. I saw someone.
Who?
I don't know. Naomi laughed softly. Well, that's mysterious. I'm serious. There was an old man outside. So, I feel like... Elena stopped speaking. Naomi waited. I feel like I should know him. At that exact moment, Maya hurried through the hallway carrying the mysterious package. She finally found Elena. I almost forgot. This was delivered for you. Elena looked surprised. For me? There wasn't a return address. Elena carefully opened the envelope. Inside was only an old silver locket. Nothing else. No note. No explanation. She slowly opened it.
Inside.
One side held the picture of a young woman smiling. The other side was empty, as though another picture had been removed years ago. Elena frowned. I've seen this before. Maya looked confused. You have? I think. She touched the locket. A sharp pain rushed through her head. Suddenly, another memory flashed. A little girl laughing. Someone lifting her into the air. A voice saying, Never lose this, little star. The memory vanished. Elena grabbed the table to steady herself. Naomi rushed forward. Elena. I'm okay. But she wasn't. The memories were coming back. One piece at a time. Outside, rain finally began to fall. Silas protected the wooden box beneath his coat. The 2 strange men moved closer. You've caused enough trouble. Leave. Silas shook his head. I didn't come to cause trouble. I came to keep a promise. One man sighed. You really don't understand, do you? Silas looked at him.
No.
The man leaned closer. If she learns the truth today, it won't only destroy this wedding. It will destroy lives. Silas remained silent. Then he quietly answered. The truth doesn't destroy lives. Lies do. The 2 men exchanged nervous looks. Inside the reception hall, Gavin noticed Elena holding the silver locket. His face lost all color. He walked over immediately. Where did you get that? Maya answered. It was delivered this morning. Gavin forced a smile. It's probably some old family keepsake. He reached for it. I'll put it somewhere safe. Elena instinctively stepped back.
No.
The word surprised even her. Gavin laughed awkwardly. I was only trying to help. I know. She slipped the locket into her purse. But I'd rather keep it. For the first time all day, Gavin looked worried. Not because of the locket itself, but because he knew exactly what it represented. Meanwhile, the young wedding photographer quietly reviewed the pictures he had taken outside. One image caught his attention.
He zoomed in.
Silas was standing in the rain. The wooden box had opened slightly. A photograph was visible inside. Only part of it, just enough to reveal a little girl wearing the exact same star-shaped necklace Elena had worn as a child. The photographer looked toward the ballroom, then back at the photo. His heartbeat quickened. This can't be a coincidence. Without realizing it, he had just captured the first piece of evidence connecting the mysterious beggar to the bride. As thunder rolled across the sky, Silas looked toward the glowing windows one last time. I've come too far to leave now. He took another step toward the entrance. Behind him, Victor Hale watched from the shadows. His expression turned cold. If he walks through those doors, everything ends tonight. Victor slowly reached inside his coat, not for a weapon, but for another faded photograph. He looked at it for a long moment, then quietly whispered, "I'm sorry, but she can never know." Who was the woman in Victor's photograph? Why did Gavin panic when he saw the locket? And what secret connected Silas, Victor, and Elena long before this wedding ever began? The answers were finally beginning to surface, but the biggest truth was still waiting behind one locked memory. Thunder rolled across the sky. The rain grew heavier. Inside the ballroom, guests laughed, glasses clinked, and the band played another cheerful song. No one realized that just outside those elegant doors, a decades-old promise was about to collide with a carefully built lie. Silas stood motionless. Rain soaked his coat. His hands tightened around the old wooden box. He closed his eyes for a brief moment. "I promised I'd never leave her alone," he whispered. "But today, she has to know." Inside, Elena tried to enjoy the celebration. She smiled for photographs. She greeted relatives. She thanked old friends for coming. Yet every smile felt forced. Her thoughts kept returning to the old man outside. Those eyes. Why did they feel so familiar? Naomi noticed her staring toward the entrance again. "You've looked over there at least 10 times. "I know. Do you want me to check?" Elena hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Please. If he's still there, I want to know." Naomi smiled reassuringly. "I'll be right back." She had no idea she was walking straight toward the biggest secret of Elena's life. Across the room, Victor Hale quietly watched Naomi leave.
His jaw tightened.
No. He immediately followed her,
Keeping several steps behind.
never attracting attention. Meanwhile, Gavin stood near the bar, pretending to chat with investors. His phone vibrated. One message. We couldn't stop him. Gavin's smile vanished. He deleted the message instantly. Then he looked toward the entrance. His breathing became uneven. This can't happen today. Outside, Naomi stepped under the covered entrance. She immediately spotted Silas. He stood quietly, looking at the ballroom through the glass. Naomi approached with a kind smile. "Excuse me, sir." Silas turned. His tired face softened. "Hello. My friend noticed you." The bride. Silas's eyes filled with emotion. "She noticed me?" Naomi nodded. "She wanted to know if you needed help." Silas smiled gently.
No.
"I don't need help. I only needed to see her happy." Naomi frowned. "You know Elena?" Silas looked toward the glowing ballroom. "I knew her, long before she remembered herself." Naomi's heartbeat quickened. "What does that mean?" Before Silas could answer, Victor stepped between them. "I'm sorry," Victor said politely. "The gentleman is confused." Naomi looked surprised. "And you are?" "An old family friend." Victor smiled warmly. "He has memory problems." Silas looked directly at Victor. "My memory is better than yours." The smile disappeared from Victor's face. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Rain pounded against the roof. Silas finally looked at Naomi. "If you care about Elena, tell her not to throw away the silver key." Naomi blinked. "What silver key?" Silas gently touched his pocket. "The one she'll find." Victor's eyes widened for the first time. How did Silas know about the key? Inside. Elena opened her purse again. Something felt strange. She reached inside. The silver locket was still there, but underneath it, her fingers touched something cold. She slowly pulled it out. A tiny silver key. She froze. I've never seen this before. Had it been inside the envelope? Or had someone secretly placed it there? She honestly didn't know. At that same moment, Naomi rushed back inside. Elena, you need to hear something. But before she could continue, Victor calmly stepped beside them. Everything okay? Naomi looked uncertain. The old man said. Victor interrupted with a laugh. Oh, him. He tells strange stories to everyone. I've seen him around town before. He isn't dangerous. Naomi wasn't convinced. He knew Elena's name. Victor answered without hesitation. The wedding announcement was in every newspaper. A reasonable explanation. Too reasonable. Naomi slowly nodded. Maybe Victor was right, but something about his eyes felt wrong. Across the ballroom, the wedding photographer quietly walked over to Maya. I need to show you something. He handed her his camera. Maya looked at the photograph. Her eyes widened. Where did you take this? Outside. Why? The little girl in the picture? Doesn't she look exactly like Elena? Maya stared silently. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. The same smile, the same necklace, the same tiny birthmark near her left eyebrow. This picture? It has to mean something. Outside, one of the security guards approached Silas again. I'm sorry. You really have to leave now. Silas nodded sadly. I understand. He looked toward the ballroom one last time. Then, very carefully, he handed the guard the wooden box. If I can't give this to her, please make sure she gets it. The guard looked confused. What is it? My whole life. Before the guard could ask another question, headlights flashed across the driveway. A black pickup truck sped into the parking lot. Its tires screeched across the wet pavement. Everyone outside turned. The driver's door flew open. A woman in her early 60s stepped out. Her gray hair was soaked by the rain. She looked terrified. The moment she saw Silas, she shouted, Silas. Silas stared in disbelief. Margaret. She ran toward him as fast as she could. Without saying another word, she wrapped her arms around him. Tears streamed down both of their faces. You shouldn't have come, she cried. I had no choice. You promised me. I know, but promises don't matter if they bury the truth forever. From inside the ballroom, Elena happened to glance toward the entrance. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she clearly saw an older woman hugging the mysterious beggar while crying uncontrollably. Something inside her heart tightened. Why would strangers react like family? Victor quietly watched from the shadows. His calm expression finally cracked. He whispered to himself. No, not Margaret. She was never supposed to find him. Who was Margaret? Why did Victor fear her arrival even more than Silas? And what truth had both of them protected for more than 20 years? The answers were getting dangerously close. Margaret wiped away her tears. Then she looked directly into Silas's eyes. She still doesn't remember, does she? Silas slowly shook his head. Not yet. Margaret glanced toward the ballroom, then whispered something so softly that only Silas could hear. The fire? It wasn't an accident. Silas's face turned completely pale. What did you say? I have proof. Silas's hands began to shake. For 22 years, he had believed one version of that terrible night. Now, everything he thought he knew was beginning to fall apart. And if Margaret was telling the truth, then someone at this wedding had been lying from the very beginning. Silence. For a long moment, neither Silas nor Margaret spoke. Rain poured around them. Cars passed by without slowing down. The wedding music echoed faintly from inside the ballroom. Margaret took a deep breath. I wanted to tell you years ago. Silas looked at her with trembling eyes. Then why didn't you? She lowered her head. Because I was afraid. Afraid of whom? Before she could answer, a car horn echoed through the parking lot. Margaret's face lost its color. He's here. Silas turned. A black luxury sedan slowly rolled to a stop. The driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out wearing an expensive black coat. His hair was gray. His face was calm. Too calm. He looked at Silas. Then at Margaret. Finally, he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who believed he had already won. Inside the ballroom, the master of ceremonies raised his microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the bride and groom to cut the cake. The crowd erupted in applause. Guests gathered around the enormous 5-tier wedding cake. Phones rose into the air. Everyone wanted the perfect picture. Elena forced another smile, but something inside her refused to settle. She looked toward the entrance once more. The old man was gone. So was the woman. Her heart sank. Why do I feel like I just lost someone? Gavin gently took Elena's hand. You okay? She nodded. I think so. You've seemed distracted all afternoon. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. He smiled for the guests. But after today, no more mysteries. His words sounded comforting, yet somehow they felt like a warning. Outside, the gray-haired man slowly approached Silas. Hello, old friend. Silas stared at him. I haven't been your friend for a very long time. The man chuckled softly. Still stubborn. Margaret stepped between them. Stay away from him. He looked at her without emotion. You shouldn't have come either. Margaret reached into her purse. This time, I'm not afraid anymore. She pulled out a thick brown envelope. Silas frowned. What's inside? Margaret answered quietly. The truth. Before Silas could take the envelope, Victor Hale appeared. His voice was sharp. Don't. Everyone froze. Victor walked toward them slowly. His polished shoes splashed through the rain. His eyes never left the envelope. You have no idea what you're about to destroy. Margaret stood her ground.
No.
I'm finally about to fix it. Inside, the photographer couldn't stop thinking about the picture he had taken earlier. He enlarged the image again, then noticed something he had completely missed. Standing several feet behind Silas was Victor, watching him, not by accident, deliberately. The photographer whispered, Why would he be following that old man? He quickly copied the photo onto his phone. Just in case. Back outside, Victor reached for the envelope. Margaret pulled it away. It belongs to Elena. Victor's voice became cold.
No.
It belongs in the past. Silas stepped forward. Enough. For 22 years, I've lived with guilt. If someone lied, today is the day the lies end. Victor looked directly into Silas's eyes. And if the truth makes her hate you? Silas didn't answer immediately. Instead, he smiled through tears. If she hates me, at least she'll hate the real me. Inside the ballroom, the knife touched the wedding cake. Guests counted together. 3, 2, 1. Just as Elena and Gavin began to cut the first slice, the ballroom doors burst open. Every head turned. One of the security guards hurried inside. His breathing was heavy. He looked directly at Elena. Ma'am, there's someone outside asking for you. The room fell silent. Gavin stepped forward. We already handled that. The guard swallowed. No, sir. I don't think this can wait. Elena looked at Gavin, then back at the guard. Who is it? The guard hesitated. He says, he made a promise to your mother. The knife slipped from Elena's hand. It hit the floor with a loud clang. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. My mother? No one at the wedding knew why those words affected her so deeply. No one except Gavin. His face turned pale. Victor closed his eyes. He whispered under his breath, It's over. Without saying another word, Elena lifted the front of her wedding dress. She began walking quickly toward the entrance. Gavin grabbed her arm. Elena. She looked at him. I need to know. It can wait.
No.
It can't. She gently pulled her arm away, then continued walking. Guests stepped aside in complete silence. The only sound left was the soft rustle of her wedding dress across the marble floor. Outside, Silas stood waiting. His clothes were soaked. The wooden box rested in his hands. His eyes filled with tears as the doors slowly opened. Elena stepped outside. For the first time, nothing stood between them. She stared at him. He stared back. Neither of them spoke. The rain seemed to disappear. The world became silent.
Then
Silas whispered just 4 words. "Hello, little star." The moment Elena heard those words, her entire body froze. A forgotten memory exploded inside her mind. She was 5 years old, running through a field of wildflowers, laughing, holding the hand of a smiling man. The same gentle voice saying, "Run faster, little star." She gasped. Her knees nearly gave out. Tears filled her eyes before she even understood why. How? How do you know that name? Silas smiled through his tears. Because, before he could finish, a loud voice interrupted from behind. Don't listen to him. Everyone turned. Gavin had followed Elena outside. Standing beside him was Victor Hale. The two men exchanged a quick glance. A glance so brief that almost no one noticed it. But the photographer did. And he quietly raised his camera.
click.
Another photograph. Another clue. Another piece of a puzzle that was finally coming together. Elena looked from Gavin to Victor, then back to Silas. 3 men. 3 different expressions. One looked terrified. One looked angry. One simply looked heartbroken. Only one of them was telling the truth. But which one? Silas slowly lifted the old wooden box. With shaking hands, he held it out toward Elena. I've carried this every single day, waiting for the moment I could give it back to you. Elena reached toward the box. Her fingertips were only inches away when a sudden gunshot echoed across the parking lot. The wooden box slipped from Silas's hands. It crashed onto the wet pavement. The lid burst open. Letters, photographs, and a tiny blue sweater scattered across the ground. Every secret hidden for 22 years was suddenly lying in plain sight. The sound of the gunshot echoed across the parking lot. Guests screamed.
Some dropped to the ground.
Others rushed back inside the ballroom. The wedding music stopped. Every eye turned toward the scattered contents of the wooden box. Silas stood frozen. Elena's heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. For a brief second, the entire world seemed to stand still. The security guards immediately searched for the shooter. Lock every entrance. Nobody leaves. Panic spread through the crowd. But something else caught Elena's attention. The tiny blue sweater lying in the rain. Without thinking, she walked toward it. She knelt on the wet pavement and gently picked it up. A tiny stitched star decorated the sleeve. The moment her fingers touched it, another memory flashed before her eyes. A little girl wearing that same sweater, running into a man's arms, laughing. "Catch me, Daddy." The vision disappeared. Elena gasped. Her breathing became uneven. "Daddy." She whispered the word, without realizing it. Silas heard her. His tears flowed freely. Nearby, the photographer hurried forward. He helped gather the scattered photographs before the rain ruined them. One picture stopped him cold. It showed a smiling young couple holding a little girl. On the back, written in faded blue ink, were 6 simple words. Our Elena, summer of 2004. He slowly turned the photograph over for everyone to see. Guests leaned closer. Murmurs spread through the crowd. That's Elena. But who are those people? Margaret picked up the brown envelope she had almost dropped. It's time. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were old police reports, hospital records, a birth certificate, and one sealed letter. She handed everything to Elena. These belong to you. Elena looked overwhelmed. I don't understand. You will. Gavin stepped forward. Elena, don't read any of that.
His voice was calm. Too calm.
Victor stood beside him. Today is your wedding. This isn't the place. Silas looked directly at Elena. The truth doesn't care about the place. It only cares about the moment. Elena slowly opened the sealed letter. The handwriting was old, familiar. She began reading aloud. My little star, if you're reading this, then I couldn't protect you the way I promised. If anyone ever tells you that your father abandoned you, Don't believe them. Every birthday, every Christmas, every single year, I searched for you. I never stopped loving you. I never stopped coming home. By the time she reached the last line, she could barely see through her tears. She looked at Silas. You wrote this. He nodded. Every word. The crowd had gone completely silent. Even strangers were wiping tears from their eyes. No one cared about the wedding anymore. Everyone wanted to know the truth. Margaret stepped beside Elena. There was a fire. 22 years ago. Everyone believed Silas died that night. He didn't. He survived. But while he was in the hospital, someone took you. Elena's hands trembled. Who? Margaret slowly turned. Her eyes settled on Victor. Victor closed his eyes. He knew the moment had finally arrived. I did. Gasps filled the parking lot. Elena stared in disbelief. You? Victor nodded. I told everyone Silas abandoned you. I forged papers. I arranged a new identity. I made sure no one could ever find you. Elena couldn't breathe. But why? Victor looked toward the ground. Because your mother asked me to protect you. Silas immediately shouted. That's a lie. Victor looked back at him.
No.
It isn't. Margaret stepped forward.
No.
She never asked you to steal her child. Victor's silence said everything. Gavin suddenly grabbed Victor's arm. Stop talking. Victor pulled away.
No.
I'm tired. I've lied long enough. Everyone turned toward Gavin. Victor continued. You knew. You've always known. The color drained from Gavin's face. Victor, don't. You only wanted to marry Elena because of the trust her parents left behind. The crowd erupted. What trust? What is he talking about? Margaret answered. The Cross family created a charitable foundation before they died. It was meant for Elena. When she turned 28, she would inherit everything. Elena slowly looked at Gavin. Did you know? He couldn't answer. His silence was louder than words. Naomi stepped forward. Answer her. Gavin lowered his head. Yes. One word. That was all it took. Elena stepped backward. Every promise, every smile, every plan for the future collapsed in an instant. I loved you. Her voice cracked. Maybe I did. Gavin whispered. But somewhere along the way, I loved winning more. Elena quietly removed her wedding ring. She placed it in his hand. I hope it was worth it. Then she turned away. She never looked back. Silas stood only a few feet away, afraid to move, afraid to hope. Elena slowly walked toward him.
She stopped.
Her eyes searched his face. She saw the wrinkles, the scars, the tears.
Then
she smiled through her own tears. I remember your voice. Silas couldn't speak. She took one more step. Dad. Silas broke down. He wrapped his daughter in the hug he had waited 22 years to give. Neither of them said another word. They didn't have to. Some moments are too powerful for words. Guests who had laughed at the old beggar only an hour earlier now stood in complete silence. Several quietly wiped away tears. The little boy who had shared his cake with Silas smiled at his grandmother. I told you, he wasn't just a homeless man. She nodded. You were right. Weeks later, Victor pleaded guilty to kidnapping, fraud, and years of falsifying legal records. The courts finally uncovered everything. Justice arrived, even if it came late. Gavin lost his business partners, his reputation, and every future he had tried to build on lies. The wedding that was supposed to make him powerful became the day everyone learned the truth. Months passed. Elena reopened her children's bookstore. But one thing had changed. Every morning, instead of opening the drawer alone, Silas stood beside her. Together, they looked at the old family photograph. This time, no face was scratched away. It was whole again, just like their family. One sunny afternoon, the little blue sweater was placed inside a glass frame on the bookstore wall. Under it hung a small plaque. It read, "Love always remembers the way home." Customers often asked about it. Elena would simply smile. It's a reminder. No matter how many years pass, The people who truly love you never stop looking. Life didn't erase the pain. It never could. But it gave them something even more valuable. Another chance. A chance to laugh together. To celebrate birthdays together. To make new memories instead of mourning lost ones. The years they had lost could never be returned. But the years ahead belonged to them. And that was enough. If you've learned anything from this story, let it be this. Never judge someone's worth by the clothes they wear. The quietest person in the room may be carrying the greatest love, the deepest sacrifice, or the most heartbreaking truth. Because sometimes, the person everyone calls a beggar is the one who has spent a lifetime searching for home.